Hi, I'm Lori Grunin, Senior Editor with CNET, and this is the Sony Alpha NEX-C3. In August, Sony will be replacing its NEX-3 interchangeable lens camera with the smaller, but not tremendously different NEX-C3. It's thinner than its predecessor, with the same width and height, but because anything other than a small prime lens tends to overwhelm the tiny body, you generally have to hold the camera in your left hand under the lens. Because it's so narrow, it's a bit difficult to hold and shoot single-handed, despite the small grip. The user interface has changed slightly as well, incorporating a bit more press and rotate. There's a new photo creativity UI in its intelligent auto mode. That gives you friendlier ways of accessing advanced settings, such as background defocus, color vividness, and brightness. Sony also adds picture effects, with the same bundle of options that we're used to seeing from other cameras, including things like red, yellow, green, or blue color highlighting, toy camera, posterizing, pop, and retro. You can add and layer the effects together before shooting, which is nice, but you can't adjust the quality or intensity of the effects like you can with Olympus's models. It also pulls in the soft skin effect from the cyber shots, if you want to take beauty shots. Since I've always found the NEX interface a bit cumbersome and too menu-driven, I was actually pleased to see that Sony had added the ability to customize the buttons for quicker access to settings like ISO sensitivity, metering mode, and autofocus mode. To me, that makes a huge difference in usability. Another thing that Sony does right, which is something I've complained about in a lot of cameras, is that when something is grayed out, you never really know why it's grayed out. Well, in this camera, if you select it, it tells you why it's grayed out. It says that you just need to turn something on or you need to turn something off. Now, one step further that I like is if it actually brought you to the place where you could make those changes. But frankly, as long as it tells you what you need to do, I think that's a great step forward. The camera also adds peaking, which makes manual focusing a lot easier, especially in bright sunlight because all you have is the LCD. It's still a tilting LCD, which I like, but there's still no electronic viewfinder. This generation still doesn't have a built-in flash, but it does ship with the same small add-on flash that uses the proprietary connector. You can also use an external microphone via that same connector. The camera retains almost all of the features of its predecessor, including multi-shot modes like Auto HDR, Handheld Twilight, and Sweep Panorama. The most notable change here is video support. It actually drops to 720p MPEG-4 recording from the NX3's faux HD of 1440 by 1080. That really doesn't bother me a lot. The video quality is fine for typical consumer recording, although the continuous autofocus seems to get distracted a little more than I like during capture. The C3 incorporates an unnecessarily higher resolution sensor than both the earlier models, bumping from about 14 megapixels to 16. It's not, however, the same 16 megapixel sensor that's in older models like the A55, and Sony claims that it has improved noise performance. At least the photo quality doesn't seem to suffer from the increase, and given the different sensors in the C3 and the NEX-5, photos look surprisingly similar, even at high ISOs. Overall, the JPEG photo quality is quite good, though the noise reduction introduces some hot pixels at about ISO 1600. I'll have to reserve final judgment on the photo quality until I can get to process the raw files, but JPEG shooters should be pretty happy in the interim. Its performance is pretty good as well. It's almost identical to the NEX-5, which was a pretty zippy camera for its class. Plus, it's got improved battery life. The NEX-5 will be a year old in September, and I suspect Sony delayed shipping the C3 for a few months until it's ready to announce a replacement for that model. Because based on my preliminary testing, the C3 is a cheaper, but similar enough option that it would cannibalize the sales of the older model before Sony's ready. On the other hand, unless you really want the thinner body or 1080 60i video, there's no real reason to wait for it to ship either. I'm Lori Grunin, and this is the Sony Alpha NEX-C3.